The air inside San Francisco International smelled faintly of coffee disinfectant and expensive perfume. Families hurried past with floral shirts and oversized luggage, their laughter echoing against the polished tiles. Marcus Johnson stood among them, gripping the handle of his weathered suitcase, smiling like a man who had waited all his life for this moment. Hawaii. 10 days in paradise with his son's family, a dream he'd paid for, planned for, and prayed would bring them closer again. The trip had cost him $20,000, but what mattered wasn't the money. It was the promise that for once he wouldn't be the odd one out. Dad Ethan called, his voice cutting through the airport noise. He was tall, handsome, his caramel skin lighter than Marcus's, his hair cut short like the white executives he worked with. His wife Claire stood beside him, blonde, elegant, holding the hands of their 2 children who looked more like her than him. Marcus's heart swelled as he waved. "There's my crew." But Ethan's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Dad, we need to talk. It's about the tickets." Marcus frowned. "What about them?" "You confirmed everything last week." Ethan glanced toward the check-in counter, then back at him. "There's been a mistake." The words landed wrong. A mistake. The same word Marcus had heard too many times from teachers who mistakenly thought he didn't belong in advanced classes, from coworkers who accidentally skipped his name off promotion lists, from neighbors who confused him for a delivery driver. He'd learned to recognize that tone. What kind of mistake? Ethan's jaw tightened. "I forgot to buy your ticket." The sound around them, the rolling of suitcases, the distant announcements. The laughter seemed to fade into a strange silence. Marcus blinked, unsure he'd heard correctly. "You what?" "I forgot," Ethan repeated, not meeting his father's eyes. With all the planning and the kids and Claire's schedule, it just slipped through. Marcus let out a breathless laugh. "You forgot, Ethan. I gave you $20,000. I sent it to your account for the flights, the hotel, the rental car. Everything." "I know," Ethan said quickly, looking down at the floor. "And we really appreciate that, Dad. But the flight's about to board. Maybe you can catch another one tomorrow." Claire stepped forward, her manicured hand resting gently on Ethan's arm. "Marcus, honey, maybe it's for the best. The flight's full anyway. We'll get everything ready for you in Hawaii." And Marcus cut her off. "You mean you're leaving without me?" Her smile froze, that polite, uneasy expression white people wore when they didn't want to be accused of something ugly. "It's not like that. It's just logistics." "Logistics?" Marcus's voice cracked. He looked at his grandchildren, Liam and Sophie, who were watching in confusion, clutching their stuffed dolphins. "You planned this trip for months, and now I don't have a ticket." Ethan's eyes darted toward the departure board. "Dad, this isn't the place to—" "This is exactly the place," Marcus said, his chest tightening. "Tell me the truth, Ethan. Did you ever plan to take me with you?" No answer, just silence. Claire looked away, and Ethan's mouth twitched as if forming a lie he no longer had the strength to say. The truth came in the form of avoidance, a lifetime of it. Marcus turned toward the Hawaiian Airlines counter, dragging his suitcase like an anchor. The woman behind the desk smiled professionally. "Aloha, sir. How can I help you? I need to check a reservation." "Marcus Johnson, or maybe under Ethan Johnson." She typed rapidly, eyes flicking over the monitor. "I do see an Ethan Johnson party of 4 leaving today at 4:15. But no Marcus Johnson on that booking." His throat felt dry. "Are you sure?" "Yes, sir. Booked 6 weeks ago. No changes since. 6 weeks ago, long before Ethan told him he'd handle everything." Marcus's breath grew shallow. The clerk offered a sympathetic look, but he barely noticed. Behind him, Ethan's voice rose. "Dad, just go home. We'll call you when we land." Marcus turned, the fluorescent lights glinting off his glasses. "Go home," he repeated, almost whispering. Claire put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Come on, we'll miss boarding." The kids hugged Marcus quickly, confused and guilty, their small arms not understanding the fracture happening around them. Then they were gone, swallowed by the crowd, the gate, the world that still didn't know how to make space for men like him. Marcus stood still long after the last call echoed through the terminal. The final boarding sign flashed red, then black departed. He let his suitcase fall. The woman at the counter spoke softly. "Sir, are you all right?" He managed a thin smile. "I will be." Outside, the California sun burned bright, the kind of brightness that made everything feel exposed. Marcus walked to the taxi line, his reflection in the glass doors staring back at him. Tired eyes gray at the temples, skin dark as mahogany, lined with years of patience mistaken for weakness. "Where to?" the driver asked. Marcus hesitated, then said, "Home." As the car pulled away from the terminal, he looked out at the sky. Somewhere above the clouds, his son and that picture-perfect family were sipping champagne, pretending everything was fine. Marcus whispered to himself, "You forgot to buy my ticket." Then, after a long pause, his voice hardened. "No, you never meant to." The driver glanced in the mirror. "You say something." Sir Marcus shook his head, eyes still fixed on the clouds. "No," he murmured. "Not yet." The house was too quiet when Marcus stepped inside. The faint ticking of the kitchen clock was the only sound that greeted him. He set his suitcase by the door and stared at it, the same suitcase he had packed so carefully, with linen shirts, sunscreen, and the camera he hadn't used since Evelyn passed. He'd pictured himself taking photos of the grandkids at sunset, maybe a family dinner on the beach where the ocean breeze softened everything that had gone wrong between him and Ethan. Instead, the suitcase looked absurd, now a relic of a dream that never existed. Marcus moved to the living room, poured himself a glass of water, and sat down. The late afternoon light slanted through the blinds, striping the room in gold and shadow. He thought about calling Ethan, demanding an explanation, but what would that do? His son had made it clear Marcus wasn't part of their family image. The phone on the counter buzzed with a new message. "Ethan. Dad, please don't overreact. We'll figure it out later. Enjoy a few days to yourself." Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "Enjoy a few days to yourself." The same line he'd heard from coworkers when they forgot to invite him to corporate retreats, or when the neighbors held barbecues and told him afterward, "We thought you might be busy." He picked up the phone again, scrolling back through his messages with Ethan. 6 weeks ago, Ethan had texted, "Got everything booked, Dad." "Flights confirmed, hotel looks great." 6 weeks ago, the same time the airline agent said the tickets were finalized. Marcus's stomach turned. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was calculation. He turned on his old desktop computer and opened his email. Searching for the payment transfer, he found it $20,000 wired to Ethan's account. The memo line read, "Family Vacation Fund." The cursor blinked at him from the glowing screen like an accusation. He opened the airline's website, typed in the reservation code Ethan had sent earlier. It no longer worked. Invalid booking reference. He called Hawaiian Airlines, his voice steady, though his hands shook slightly. The same polite woman from earlier answered. "Sir, I remember you from the airport. How can I assist you?" "I need confirmation," Marcus said. "When was the Johnson reservation made?" "1 moment," she replied, typing swiftly. "Yes, it was created 6 weeks ago. 4 passengers, no modifications or additions." "No additions," Marcus repeated. "So, no missing ticket. No mistake. That's correct, sir." The room seemed to tilt. His chest tightened, his breathing shallow. He thanked her and hung up. Marcus stared at his reflection in the black computer screen. The truth wasn't new, it was just the latest version of the same wound. He'd been excluded before. He just hadn't expected it from his own blood. He thought of Evelyn, his wife. She was white, a gentle woman, with eyes that never looked away when people whispered behind their backs. When they married in the 1980s, her parents refused to attend the wedding. "It's not about race," they'd said, but it always was. Evelyn used to say, "Baby racism doesn't die, it just changes its clothes." And here it was, wearing vacation shirts and polite smiles, hiding behind excuses like mistake and logistics. Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time a photo popped up. Ethan and Claire boarding the plane with the kids smiling. The caption read, "Wish you were here." Dad followed by a laughing emoji. His thumb hovered over the delete button. Then slowly, deliberately, he saved the photo instead. Evidence, he thought. He stood, his body heavy but his mind sharpening. Walking to the window, he looked out at the quiet street, neat lawns, polished cars, mailboxes with American flags. He was the only black homeowner on this block. He'd bought this house 30 years ago when the realtor accidentally gave him the wrong address, assuming he couldn't afford the right one. He'd stayed anyway. He'd survived worse than this. But this time, survival wasn't enough. Marcus sat down at his desk and pulled out a leather folder labeled estate planning. Evelyn had insisted they prepare everything before she passed. Inside were old wills, insurance papers, property deeds. His handwriting was still on the front page, update with Ethan as beneficiary. He laughed under his breath. Not anymore. The next morning, Marcus woke before sunrise. He shaved carefully, made coffee, and looked at the framed photos on his kitchen wall. Ethan as a child holding a science fair trophy. Evelyn in her nurse's uniform, the kids at Christmas. He didn't feel anger anymore, just clarity. He picked up the phone and called the Grand Kawa Resort in Maui. The woman who answered had a bright, cheerful accent. "Aloha, Mr. Johnson." "How can I help you today? I'd like to cancel a reservation," he said, under the name Ethan Johnson. "One moment. Yes, that's a 10-night stay in our Ocean View villa. May I ask the reason for cancellation because the person who made it doesn't deserve paradise?" She hesitated. "Sir, there will be a cancellation fee of $3,000. "That's fine," Marcus said. "Send the confirmation to my email." The sound of typing filled the line, then the gentle hum of a printer. "It's done, Mr. Johnson. You should receive the confirmation shortly." When they show up tomorrow, Marcus asked quietly, "What will you tell them?" "I'll tell them the booking was canceled by the primary payer, Marcus Johnson, at 6:47 a.m. Pacific Time." "Perfect." He hung up and stared at the morning light spilling across the table. For the first time in years, Marcus smiled without bitterness. They thought he would go home and stay silent, like every time someone dismissed him, ignored him, pretended he didn't exist. But this time, silence would speak for him loud, clear, and unforgettable. He sipped his coffee and whispered to the empty room, "You forgot to buy my ticket, Ethan." "But I just canceled yours." The morning after the cancellation, the city of Oakland felt strangely new to Marcus, not because it had changed, but because he finally looked at it without pretending. The mist hung over the hills like a slow-moving ghost, softening the edges of rooftops and telephone wires. His neighborhood, once a white enclave that barely tolerated him, had grown quieter over the years. Some of the old families had moved away. Others had simply learned to lower their eyes instead of speaking their minds. Marcus parked his car outside a corner cafe, the one he and Evelyn used to visit every Sunday after church. He hadn't been back in years. Inside, the aroma of roasted coffee beans wrapped around him like a memory. The barista, a young black woman with natural curls and gold hoops, greeted him with a warm smile. "Morning, sir. What can I get you?" "Black coffee," Marcus said. Then after a pause, "No sugar." He sat by the window watching the street wake up. The cafe was full of quiet conversations, people on laptops, couples holding hands, a man in a suit reading the Chronicle. Yet beneath the normalcy, Marcus felt something heavy, the echo of humiliation still clinging to him from the airport. He stirred his coffee slowly. The spoon clinked against the ceramic cup, rhythmic and sharp. Every sound reminded him of that terminal, the metallic roll of suitcases, the way Ethan avoided eye contact, the slight curl in Claire's smile when she'd said, "It's just logistics." He had seen that smile before in boardrooms where white colleagues praised his calm demeanor while stealing his ideas in neighborhood meetings where his suggestions were too assertive, in the pitying glances from bank clerks who asked, "Are you sure this account is yours?" Every smile, every mistake, every misunderstanding had carved something into him, something that looked a lot like silence. Evelyn had once told him, "You have the kind of quiet that scares people, Marcus. They can't tell if you're angry or just done." He smiled faintly at the memory. She had loved his stillness, but she'd also feared what it might turn into. The barista passed by to refill his cup. "You okay, sir?" Marcus looked up. Her tone wasn't the automatic politeness of customer service. It was genuine. He nodded. "Yeah, just thinking. About the world or about people," she asked, half joking. "Same thing," he replied. "One just teaches you about the other." She laughed softly and walked away. For a moment, Marcus felt something like peace. Then his phone buzzed again. Ethan. Dad, we got here. The hotel says the reservation's gone. Did you do something? Please call me. Marcus's thumb hovered over the screen. He typed, then deleted, then finally sent, "You forgot to buy my ticket. I forgot to keep yours." He set the phone face down and finished his coffee. Outside, he walked past familiar houses, one with a flagpole, another with a neighborhood watch sign that always made him uneasy. Decades ago, one of those same neighbors had called the police when Marcus was trimming his own hedges at night. "We thought you were breaking in," the officer had said, flashlight in his face. Evelyn had stood on the porch trembling with rage. Now walking down that same street, Marcus didn't feel anger, only recognition. The same quiet cruelty, just wrapped in better manners. He reached his driveway and paused before going inside. The house was still full of Evelyn's touches. Her books, her framed photos, the faint scent of jasmine from the candle she used to light after dinner. He ran his hand along the mantel where their wedding photo stood. She wore a simple cream dress, her arm looped through his. They had faced the world together once, believing love was enough to conquer ignorance. But love, Marcus had learned, was fragile when built on denial. He went into his study, turned on the lamp, and opened a box marked personal. Inside were fragments of his Life Awards letters and a few yellowing newspaper clippings. One headline read, "Local engineer denied promotion despite leading project success." Another diversity training announced after complaint of workplace bias. He remembered how proud Ethan had been the day Marcus became the first black senior engineer at his firm. But over the years, pride turned into embarrassment. Ethan married into whiteness and called it progress. Marcus whispered to the empty room, "You learned how to pass, son, but you forgot who made it possible." He reached for a small wooden box in the drawer, Evelyn's keepsake. Inside were her letters. He unfolded one from the year before she died. "Marcus promised me that when I'm gone, you won't let them make you small again. The world won't stop trying, but you've got to stop helping it." He read the words twice, then placed the letter gently back into the box. The sun was lowering, casting amber light across the shelves. Marcus sat at the desk and began writing not out of anger, but out of clarity. He listed every financial gift he had given Ethan over the past 20 years. Tuition, car payments, mortgage, help, family trips. The total at the bottom made him whistle softly. He took a deep breath, then opened his email. To Attorney Angela Brooks at law firm, com, subject request for consultation, family estate, and legal protection message. Ms. Brooks, my name is Marcus Johnson. I'm seeking legal advice regarding financial exploitation by a family member. I can provide documentation. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. Respectfully, M. Johnson. He hit send, then leaned back in his chair. The click of the mouse echoed like the closing of a door. Outside, a car drove by with its windows down, the music loud, a hip-hop beat vibrating against the evening air. Marcus smiled faintly. Once Ethan had told him that music like that was too angry. Marcus had replied, "That's because you never had to live what they're rapping about." Now, for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt that rhythm inside himself, not anger, but rhythm. A pulse. A reminder. He looked again at Evelyn's photo and whispered, "I'm not small anymore." The morning sunlight broke through the blinds in sharp golden stripes that crossed Marcus's desk like bars. He sat there quietly, a steaming cup of black coffee in his hand, watching dust motes swirl through the light. His email inbox showed a new message from Angela Brooks, subject reconsultation, family estate, Mr. Johnson. I can meet you tomorrow at 2 p.m. My office is in downtown Oakland. Please bring any relevant documentation. Marcus exhaled. He didn't realize until then how much he had been holding his breath. He replied simply, "Confirmed. See you tomorrow." Outside, the neighborhood stirred sprinklers, ticking dogs, barking, someone revving an engine. He walked to the window, his reflection faint against the glass. The face staring back at him was older-lined, but steady. A man who had spent decades enduring other people's comfort at the cost of his own. He sipped his coffee, then picked up his landline. His hands didn't tremble this time. The hotel clerk answered cheerfully. "Aloha, this is the Grand Kahua Resort. How may I help you today?" "I'd like to cancel a reservation," Marcus said evenly. It should be under the name Ethan Johnson. One moment, sir. He could hear the tapping of keys, the background hum of island music. Yes, that's a 10-night stay in our Ocean View villa. May I ask for your full name, Marcus Johnson? I'm the primary payer. Of course. I'll just need to verify your billing information. He read it out each digit, calm and deliberate. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. May I ask why you're canceling? It's a beautiful time to visit Maui. Calm weather, perfect surf. Marcus smiled faintly. Because paradise isn't for everyone. A pause. Then the clerk spoke softly. Sir, there will be a cancellation penalty. $3,000. That's fine. Go ahead. Typing resumed. All right, Mr. Johnson. The cancellation is complete. You'll receive confirmation via email shortly. When the guests arrive, would you like us to give them a message? Yes, Marcus said. Tell them the person who paid for their paradise decided not to buy into lies anymore. The clerk hesitated, then said quietly, Understood, sir. He hung up, setting the phone gently on the receiver. The act felt ceremonial, small, but heavy with meaning. For once, Marcus wasn't reacting to the world. He was directing it. He opened his email. The cancellation notice appeared instantly. Subject reservation canceled. Grand Kawa Resort canceled by Marcus Johnson. Time, 6:47 a.m. Pacific Time. Amount refunded, $16, $800 after penalties. Marcus stared at the timestamp. The same hour Ethan would likely be ordering breakfast on the beach, still convinced his father was home nursing hurt feelings. He imagined the moment tomorrow when they'd arrive at the hotel, luggage in hand, only to be told their rooms were gone. He didn't feel cruel. He felt balanced. He folded his arms and leaned back in his chair. Evelyn would have approved not the vengeance, but the dignity. She'd always said, sometimes justice doesn't look kind, but it still needs to be done. The day passed quietly. Marcus spent it sorting old files, cleaning the kitchen, restoring order to things that had been neglected. He cooked himself lunch, grilled salmon collard greens and rice, plated it neatly, and sat by the window to eat. For the first time in years, he tasted food instead of rushing through it. His phone buzzed just as he finished washing the dishes. He glanced at the screen. Ethan. Dad, did you cancel the reservation? The hotel says it's gone. They're saying your name was on the account. Marcus didn't respond. 5 minutes later, another message, Ethan. This isn't funny. We have 2 kids here. Fix it now. Then a third, Ethan. I swear to God. Dad, if this is about the airport thing... Marcus muted the phone and turned on the radio. Nina Simone's voice filled the room, low, soulful, defiant. You've got to learn to leave the table when love's no longer being served. He smiled. The lyrics weren't advice, they were confirmation. As night fell, Marcus brewed tea and sat on the porch. The air smelled like wet earth and magnolia. He remembered summers in Alabama when he was a boy before his family moved west for better chances. His grandmother used to say, "White folks don't need a reason, baby, just an excuse." He had learned the difference between mistake and intention long before today. The moon rose pale above the trees. He checked his phone once more, 24 missed calls. The last voicemail came from Claire, her tone desperate. "Marcus, please. The kids are crying. We don't know what to do. Ethan made a mistake, but this is too much. We're family." He replayed that word in his head, family. Family had left him at the gate. Family had looked him in the eye and lied. Family had told him to go home like a stranger. He turned off the phone, placed it face down on the table, and whispered, "You made your choice." Before bed, Marcus walked through each room of the house, locking the doors, turning off the lights. In the quiet, he could almost hear Evelyn's laughter echo in the walls, that warm musical sound that used to fill every space. He stopped in the hallway where her portrait hung. "You'd be proud of me," he said softly. I finally stopped saying, "It's okay." He slept better than he had in years. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the living room. His phone lit up again, dozens of new calls, messages, voicemails. He ignored them all. Instead, he brewed coffee, opened the window, and breathed deeply. The radio reported perfect weather in Maui, blue skies, calm seas. Marcus pictured Ethan and Claire standing at the front desk, arguing with a confused clerk. He imagined their voices rising, the realization spreading across their faces like a shadow. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Justice had already arrived, quiet and precise. As the church bells down the street began to ring, Marcus whispered to himself, "Let them learn what forgetting costs." The phone started ringing before sunrise. Marcus was halfway through his morning coffee when it began the same sharp tone repeating every few minutes, echoing through the quiet house like a stubborn ghost. He didn't rush to answer. He knew exactly who it was. By the time he finished his second cup, there were 17 missed calls, all from the same Hawaii number. The voicemail icon blinked insistently. Marcus sighed, picked up the phone, and pressed play. "Dad, call me back." "Urgent." Ethan's voice barked, clipped, and panicked. "The hotel says you canceled the booking. We've got the kids. No rooms, nothing. Call me right now." The next message came minutes later. Claire this time, her tone rehearsed and trembling. "Marcus, I don't know what's going on, but we're standing in the lobby with 2 crying children. Please, whatever this is, stop it." Marcus let the messages play in order, one after another, each more frantic than the last. By the 10th message, Claire's politeness was gone. By the 15th, Ethan's voice had cracked with anger. "Dad, this is insane. You're punishing us for a mistake. Do you understand what you've done? We're sleeping in the damn lobby. Fix this." Marcus switched the phone to speaker mode, placed it on the kitchen table, and continued stirring sugar into his coffee. He took a slow sip, listening as his son's outrage filled the room. The irony wasn't lost on him. The same son who had told him to just go home now, begging him to make things right. He picked up the phone and scrolled through the call log. 56 attempts overnight. Text after text filled the screen, the timeline of their unraveling. 8:47 p.m. "Dad, call me." 9:15 p.m. "They won't let us check in." "What the hell?" 11:02 p.m. "You canceled everything." "Why 1:18 a.m.? "Kids are crying. Please answer." 3:30 a.m. "This isn't you. You're not like this." 5:03 a.m. "We have nowhere to go. Fix this now." Marcus chuckled softly. "No, son," he murmured. "You're right. I wasn't like this before. That was the problem." He placed the phone face down and looked out the window. The sun was climbing over the Oakland hills, painting the neighborhood in a soft, forgiving light. The same light that had seen him forgive too many things for too many years. By noon, the calls had slowed, replaced by longer voicemails, the tone shifting from rage to pleading. "Dad, please. We can't find another hotel. Everything's full. The kids don't understand what's happening. Just fix this. We'll pay you back. Pay him back." The words made him laugh out loud. He carried his mug to the living room and sat in Evelyn's old armchair, the one by the window with the faded floral pattern. The phone buzzed again, vibrating against the table. He ignored it. Outside, the street was calm. A jogger passed by a mail truck stopped 2 houses down. Life went on indifferent and steady. Marcus closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the morning seep into his skin. For years, peace had felt like something he had to earn through patience, silence, and compromise. But peace, he realized, wasn't given. It was reclaimed. When the phone buzzed again, he finally picked it up and pressed play on the newest voicemail. Dad, Ethan said, voice hoarse from exhaustion. "We spent the night in the lobby. The kids are scared. Claire's crying. You can't do this. You're better than this. Better than what Marcus wondered. Better than defending his dignity. Better than reminding his son what betrayal costs." He leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Evelyn's words came back to him. "Sometimes kindness gets mistaken for weakness." He whispered to the empty room. Not anymore. By late afternoon, the phone rang again. Marcus let it go to voicemail, waited for the tone, and then for the first time called back. Ethan answered before the first ring finished. "Dad?" "Thank God. We've been trying to—" Marcus interrupted, calm but cold. "How's the vacation?" "Don't do that," Ethan snapped. "The kids are miserable. We have nowhere to stay. You need to fix this." "I didn't break it," Marcus replied. "You canceled the reservation." "You mean the one I paid for, the one you used my money to exclude me from?" "That's not the point," Ethan's voice cracked. "You're punishing everyone for a misunderstanding." Marcus paused, then spoke softly. You didn't misunderstand anything, Ethan. You made a choice. You told me to go home. Now you know what that feels like." On the other end, silence stretched a silence heavy enough to crush everything between them. Claire's voice broke in faintly. "Marcus, please. Think of the children. I am thinking of them," he said. "And I'm thinking how they'll grow up watching how their parents treat people who look like me. Maybe this lesson will stick." Ethan exhaled sharply. "You sound just like those people on TV who make everything about race." Marcus smiled. "That's easy to say when race has always worked for you." "You're being cruel," Ethan hissed. "No, son," Marcus said gently. "I'm being honest." He ended the call. The phone rang again almost immediately. He powered it off this time. The silence that followed was clean, absolute, and freeing. Marcus stood and walked to his office. The afternoon light glowed across Evelyn's framed photo. He whispered to her, "They're learning love. Finally learning." He spent the rest of the evening sorting through files for his meeting tomorrow: property deeds, bank statements, old tax returns. Each document represented years of work, every number a reminder of how long he'd been the one holding everyone else together. When he was done, he stacked everything neatly into a leather folder. It felt like armor. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Marcus stepped outside. The neighborhood was bathed in amber light. Children's laughter drifted from the park, and the air smelled faintly of barbecue smoke. For a fleeting moment, he felt something close to forgiveness, not for them, but for himself. He whispered into the dusk, "This isn't revenge, it's remembering who I am." Then he turned off the porch light and went inside, leaving the quiet street behind. Tomorrow, he would meet Angela Brooks, and this time, he wouldn't be asking for fairness. He'd be defining it. Marcus woke early, long before dawn, the air still cool and heavy with the smell of rain. He lay in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling, the rhythmic ticking of the clock echoing through the quiet house. Sleep had come easily the night before, but dreams hadn't. He had seen faces from his past, supervisors, neighbors, even police officers, all with the same indifferent smile that said, "You don't belong here." When the first streak of light broke through the curtains, he rose, showered, dressed in a crisp white shirt and gray slacks, and brewed a pot of coffee. The kitchen light reflected off the polished countertop, highlighting the framed photo of Evelyn in her nurse's uniform. Her steady eyes seemed to meet his. "You'd tell me to keep calm," Marcus whispered, "but not quiet." He poured his coffee, opened his folder of documents, and began reviewing what he would bring to his meeting with Angela Brooks. Bank transfers, receipts, even old text messages where Ethan had called his father's support a safety net. Every line was proof of a pattern, not just of betrayal, but of expectation. They had come to believe Marcus's generosity was endless, that his patience would absorb every insult, that the soft-spoken black man who had built everything from nothing would keep saying, "It's fine." He traced the numbers with his finger: tuition, mortgage payments, family vacations. He could almost hear Evelyn's voice. "You can't buy your way into their love, Marcus." He smiled faintly. "I'm done trying." Before leaving the house, he stopped by the bookshelf in his study. Wedged between novels and engineering manuals was a thin manila envelope labeled Personal History. Inside were records he hadn't looked at in years, photocopies of police reports, newspaper clippings, and letters from civil rights organizations. He slid them out carefully and placed them in the folder with the rest. If Angela Brooks was going to represent him, she needed to understand the full picture, not just a son's betrayal, but the story of how it all began. The drive to downtown Oakland took less than 20 minutes. The city shimmered in the morning light. Murals of black leaders stretched across old brick walls, coffee shops alive with conversation, and the hum of a place that had fought for dignity and survived. Marcus parked near 14th Street and looked up at the glass building with Brooks and Associates, civil rights and estate law etched in silver across the entrance. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and paper. A receptionist greeted him with a smile. "Mr. Johnson, Ms. Brooks will see you in a moment." Angela Brooks appeared shortly after mid-40s. Tall, poised, her locks pulled neatly back. Her handshake was firm, her voice warm but direct. "Mr. Johnson, it's an honor. I read your email. Why don't we talk in my office?" Marcus followed her into a sunlit room lined with bookshelves and framed certificates. She gestured for him to sit, then waited as he laid his folder on the table. "I'll get straight to the point," he said. "My son used my money to plan a family vacation. Then he left me at the airport, told me he'd forgotten to buy my ticket." Angela's brows rose slightly. "He left you behind. He didn't forget." Marcus said, his voice steady. "He excluded me because I didn't fit their image, because I'm not the kind of black that looks good in family photos they can post online." Angela leaned back in her chair, eyes sharp. "That's not forgetfulness. That's erasure." Marcus nodded. "Exactly. I canceled their vacation. They're in Hawaii right now, stranded. And I'm not sorry." Angela smiled slightly, the kind of smile that meant good. "I'm not here to ask how to fix it," Marcus continued. "I'm here to make sure it never happens again. I've supported that boy for 20 years. Mortgage, tuition, medical bills. I want legal protection. I want to make it clear if something happens to me, he gets nothing." Angela opened her notepad. "That's absolutely within your rights. I'll draft a new will, ensure it's watertight against any challenges. But if you don't mind me asking why now, after all this time," Marcus hesitated. "Because this wasn't just about money. It was about what he sees when he looks at me. You know what I mean." Angela nodded slowly. "Yes, I do." He leaned forward. "When my wife was alive, things were easier. She was white, good woman, strong. But even then I saw it. The way her friends looked at me, the way teachers talked down to our boy. When he got older, he started noticing how being light-skinned opened doors I had to kick down. I told him never to forget where he came from." "And he did," Angela said softly. Marcus's voice lowered. "He learned to pass, to blend, to hide the parts of himself that came from me. And now he's teaching his kids to do the same." Angela set down her pen. "Mr. Johnson, what your son did is financial exploitation, but it's also generational trauma. You've carried that burden long enough." For the first time, Marcus felt tears prick the corners of his eyes. He blinked them away, embarrassed. Angela's tone softened. "You don't have to apologize for feeling it." "I'm not," Marcus said. "I'm just surprised it still hurts." Angela began outlining next steps, the legal language for exclusion, the process of notarization, the timeline for finalization. Marcus listened carefully, nodding. Every clause she described felt like a small act of liberation. When they finished, she asked, "What do you want done with your estate?" Marcus looked out the window. The sun reflected off the mirrored buildings, casting streaks of gold across the glass. "I want it to mean something. Scholarships for young black engineers, grants for kids from neighborhoods like the one I grew up in, something that lasts longer than my son's resentment." Angela smiled. "That's a legacy worth protecting." Marcus stood, shaking her hand firmly. "Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Please," she said, "call me Angela. And Mr. Johnson." "Yes." She met his eyes. "What you're doing isn't revenge, it's restoration." He nodded slowly. "Then let's restore it right." That night back home, Marcus placed his signed appointment note on the desk beside Evelyn's photo. Outside, thunder rolled low in the distance. Rain began to fall steady, cleansing, relentless. He opened the window and let the cool air in, closing his eyes as it touched his face. For the first time, the past didn't feel like a weight. It felt like a map, one that had led him right here. The next afternoon, the rain had cleared, leaving the city washed clean under a pale October sky. Marcus arrived at Brooks & Associates 10 minutes early, wearing a dark blue blazer that Evelyn had once said made him look like a pastor. He didn't feel holy, but he did feel certain. Angela Brooks greeted him at the door of her office with a firm handshake and a confident smile. "Mr. Johnson," she said, "I've reviewed everything you sent. You've been remarkably organized. Most people come in with a box of chaos." "I'm an engineer," Marcus said with a faint grin. "Chaos doesn't suit me." Angela motioned for him to sit. Her desk was neat, lined with folders and color-coded sticky notes. A framed quote hung behind her, "Justice is not revenge, it's balance restored." "I like that," Marcus said, nodding toward it. "It's my mother's," Angela replied. "She was one of the first black women judges in Alabama. She taught me that balance doesn't come from forgiveness alone." Marcus smiled. "Your mother sounds like someone Evelyn would have liked." Angela leaned forward. "Let's talk about your balance then." She opened the folder marked Estate Restructure. Marcus Johnson. "Based on what you've told me, we'll be drafting a new will, reallocating your estate to organizations and individuals who align with your values, people, and causes that respect who you are. I'll make sure it's bulletproof against any legal challenge from your son." Marcus nodded slowly. "I want my money to go where it means something, not to people who see me as a wallet or a mistake." Angela glanced through her notes. "You mentioned scholarships for black engineering students." "Yes, Evelyn and I talked about it before she died. We wanted to help kids who look like me get the opportunities I had to fight for." "I can make that happen," Angela said. "And what about your home?" Marcus hesitated, looking down at his hands. "I want it turned into a community space, a mentorship center, somewhere black men can talk about the things they're told to stay quiet about: fear, anger, exhaustion." Angela's expression softened. "You're not just protecting your legacy, Mr. Johnson. You're reclaiming your narrative." He exhaled slowly. "That's all I ever wanted." For a while, they went through numbers, retirement accounts, savings, life insurance, property deeds. Marcus listened carefully, occasionally adding a dry joke that made Angela laugh. But beneath his composure, there was a quiet current of pain, one that neither of them ignored. When the discussion turned to Ethan, Angela's tone changed. "I read through the messages," she said. "It's clear he's used guilt as leverage. Emotional coercion like that is common in financial abuse, especially toward aging parents." Marcus tilted his head. "You make it sound like a crime." "It is," Angela replied. "Not in the way people think. It's not about stealing cash. It's about controlling the person, making you feel responsible for their comfort." Marcus's jaw tightened. He learned that from watching The World. Angela frowned. "How so?" "My son's mother was white. Her family never liked me. They smiled in public, whispered in private. When Ethan was little, he saw how they treated me the way I had to shrink just to keep peace. Somewhere along the line, he learned that power looks white and silence looks safe." Angela tapped her pen thoughtfully. "And you stayed silent for his sake." Marcus looked her in the eye. "Until now." She nodded slowly. "Then let's make this silence mean something different. Not surrender, but closure." Angela spent the next hour walking him through the legal structure: a revocable living trust, charitable endowments, witness, verification, competency, certification. Her language was precise but accessible. Marcus found comfort in her control. She reminded him of Evelyn in that way, poised, sharp, and utterly unafraid of hard truths. When they finished, Angela pushed the documents aside. "One last thing," she said. "We need to record a statement, a short video confirming that you're making these decisions willingly, of sound mind. It's standard procedure to prevent future disputes." Marcus nodded. "You mean so Ethan can't claim I lost my senses?" "Exactly." She positioned her phone on a small tripod. "Just look into the camera and speak naturally." Marcus folded his hands, staring at the lens. "My name is Marcus Johnson. I'm fully aware of my decisions. I'm modifying my estate because I've learned that blood doesn't always mean loyalty, and family doesn't always mean love. I choose to invest in dignity, education, and the future of those who still have to fight to be seen." Angela stopped recording, her eyes shining. That she said softly was perfect. Marcus smiled faintly. "You should have seen me back in the day. I gave speeches to engineers who didn't think I belonged in the same room. I learned to sound like authority before I ever had any." Angela chuckled. "That's the kind of authority they can't revoke." Marcus stood to leave, and she walked him to the door. "I'll call you in a few days once the documents are ready for signing," she said. "Until then, don't answer any calls from Hawaii." He laughed. "I've already turned the phone off." As he stepped outside, the cool air hit him like clarity. The city buzzed, cars, honking vendors calling someone playing jazz on a corner saxophone. Oakland was alive, imperfect, but his. He crossed the street to his car, feeling lighter than he had in years. Not vindicated, grounded. He wasn't the victim anymore. Before starting the engine, he looked at the phone resting on the passenger seat. For a brief moment, he imagined Ethan's face, pale, angry, desperate, and felt nothing. Not hatred, not sorrow, just distance. He turned on the ignition. Nina Simone's voice came on the radio, soulful and defiant. "I wish I knew how it would feel to be free." Marcus smiled and whispered, "Now I do." He drove home with the windows down the wind against his face, the city unfolding before him like a long overdue beginning. The following Monday dawned crisp and clear, the kind of California morning that promised new beginnings. Marcus woke before the alarm, feeling a strange sense of steadiness in his bones, the calm that comes when you finally stop asking permission to breathe. He dressed with care, gray slacks, the same blue blazer, a tie that Evelyn had given him one Christmas, deep burgundy with faint silver stripes. "You look like a man who knows what he's worth," she used to tease. Today, that finally felt true. At 10:30 sharp, Marcus parked outside Angela Brooks's downtown office. The building's mirrored facade caught the morning sun reflecting the Oakland skyline in shimmering fragments. Inside, the elevator ride to the 15th floor felt like an ascent, not just between levels, but between versions of himself. Angela met him in the reception area, all business today. Charcoal suit, silver hoop earrings, hair tied high. "Mr. Johnson," she said warmly, "everything's ready. This won't take long, but I want you to read each page before signing." She guided him into the glass-walled conference room overlooking the bay. 2 witnesses sat at the table, a young paralegal and an older woman with notary credentials. Stacks of paper rested neatly beside a black fountain pen. "Before we start," Angela said, "I want you to know that what you're doing here will stand. No court can challenge it. This isn't just legal, it's unshakable." Marcus nodded. "That's all I ever wanted, for things to finally mean what they say." Angela opened the folder, reading from the first page. "This document serves as the last will and testament of Marcus Johnson, executed of sound mind and free will. It revokes all prior versions and establishes a new distribution of assets as follows." Her voice was calm, precise. "Your home will be transferred into a nonprofit foundation, the Evelyn and Marcus Johnson Center for Mentorship and Leadership. It will provide workshops, counseling, and financial literacy programs for young black men in Oakland." Marcus's chest tightened, but in a good way. "She'd like that," he whispered. Angela smiled. "I think she would too." She continued reading. 50% of your remaining estate will fund the Johnson Engineering Scholarship administered through UC Berkeley, dedicated to supporting black and minority students in STEM fields. The other 50% will go to the Oakland Youth Empowerment Initiative job training, community, housing, and education programs." When she reached the final clause, her tone shifted slightly more solemn. "And as per your request, your son, Ethan Johnson, is to be excluded entirely from inheritance due to documented financial exploitation and emotional coercion." The room was silent, except for the distant hum of traffic below. Marcus studied the papers, the bold print, the legal precision, the finality of it all. He signed each page slowly, deliberately, like sealing a door that should have been closed years ago. The witnesses signed next, followed by Angela. The notary pressed her seal into the paper with a soft crack. And just like that, it was done. Angela exhaled, setting down her pen. "Congratulations, Mr. Johnson. You just took your life back." Marcus leaned back in his chair, a small smile curling at the edges of his mouth. "Feels strange," he said. "Not angry, not sad, just lighter." "That's what freedom feels like," Angela said. They spent another hour reviewing final copies and scanning documents for secure storage. When everything was packed into a leather briefcase, Angela handed it to him. "This copy is yours. Keep it somewhere safe. And if your son tries to reach out, you call me, not him." Marcus nodded. "He's already called 56 times. I'm sure 57 won't change much." Angela chuckled. "Some people only understand boundaries when they're written in ink." Before he left, she reached across the table. "Marcus, you didn't just protect yourself. You set an example. Too many of our elders let guilt talk them out of justice. What you did here, that's legacy work." Her words lingered as he stepped back into the sunlight. Legacy work. He walked slowly to his car, taking in the rhythm of the city, the street vendors, the hum of buses, a man preaching softly on the corner. For the first time in years, Marcus didn't feel invisible. He felt present, grounded, seen. He stopped by the waterfront on the drive home. The bay stretched wide and silver under the noon sun, seagulls swooping low over the waves. He sat on a bench overlooking the water and took out Evelyn's photo from his wallet. She was smiling, eyes crinkled at the corners, sunlight caught in her hair. "I did it, Evie," he murmured. "I finally stood up the way you told me to." He imagined her laugh, that gentle, teasing lilt. "Took you long enough." Marcus chuckled softly, tucking the photo back into his wallet. "Yeah," he said. "But better late than never." The breeze picked up, tugging at his jacket, carrying the faint scent of salt and eucalyptus. He thought of Ethan, probably still in Hawaii, angry, ashamed, trying to frame himself as the victim. But that wasn't Marcus's burden anymore. He pulled out his phone, turned it on for the first time in days. A flood of notifications appeared, missed calls, texts, voicemails. He deleted them all without reading. The silence that followed felt like a clean page. Driving home, he noticed details he hadn't in years: a new mural of Malcolm X kids playing basketball near the old rec center, an elderly man selling newspapers on the corner. Oakland was alive unapologetically, black unapologetically itself. And so was he. At a red light, Marcus caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. He saw no bitterness there, only peace, the kind that comes after you stop waiting for people to understand and start living on your own terms. When he got home, he placed the briefcase on Evelyn's desk, right beside her framed nursing license. For the first time since her death, the room felt alive again, not as a shrine to grief, but as a space reclaimed. He whispered, "We built this together. Now it's finally safe." Then he opened the window, letting in the sound of the city and the soft, forgiving wind. Outside, somewhere far away, a plane passed overhead. Maybe one from Hawaii, maybe not. Marcus didn't look up. He didn't need to. His paradise was already here. 3 days after signing the documents, Marcus's phone lit up with a notification: Flight 221, Honolulu to San Francisco on time. He had almost forgotten he still received alerts from the travel itinerary Ethan had once shared with him. The irony wasn't lost on him. The same trip that began with his exclusion would now end with his return to control. He closed the notification and set the phone down. There was nothing left to prepare. The will was signed, notarized, sealed, and filed. Angela Brooks would meet him at the airport carrying a certified copy of the document and the calm precision of someone who dealt in permanent consequences. Marcus spent the morning as if it were any other coffee at sunrise, a walk through the neighborhood, a quiet hour in Evelyn's chair, watching the light shift across the walls. But beneath the routine, his pulse beat with a quiet certainty. By the time he pulled into the San Francisco International parking garage that afternoon, he wasn't the same man who had stood here weeks ago. He wasn't the old father waiting to be told he didn't belong. He was the man who defined what belonging meant. Angela was already waiting at the arrivals terminal wearing a dark coat and sunglasses, her briefcase tucked neatly under one arm. "You ready?" she asked. Marcus smiled faintly. "More than they are." They stood side by side at the barrier where families gathered to greet returning travelers. The large display board above them flickered. Arrived. Flight 221 from Honolulu. The crowd stirred. Children waved paper-lace, couples craned their necks toward the sliding doors. Then, as if on cue, the glass parted. Ethan appeared first, pulling 2 heavy suitcases, his Hawaiian shirt wrinkled and his face drawn tight with fatigue. Behind him came Claire, her blonde hair disheveled, holding Sophie's hand, while Liam dragged a stuffed dolphin along the floor. Their tan faces were pale with frustration. Marcus stood still, watching them navigate the crowd. He could almost read the thoughts flickering across Ethan's face, the surprise of seeing him there, the confusion, the tightening panic. Sophie spotted him first. "Grandpa!" she cried, breaking into a run. Marcus knelt to meet her, his arms open. She collided with him, wrapping her small arms around his neck. Liam followed close behind, pressing his face into Marcus's jacket. "We missed you," Sophie said muffled. "Mommy said we'd see you in Hawaii." Marcus smiled softly. "I know, sweetheart. I missed you too." When he stood, Ethan had reached them. His eyes were red, not from tears, but from sleepless nights and frustration. "Dad," he began, his tone already defensive. "What are you doing here welcoming my family home?" Marcus replied evenly. "You look like the vacation took more out of you than expected." Claire gave a weak, polite smile, the kind that begged for truce but offered none. "Marcus, this isn't necessary." Angela stepped forward, her presence quiet but commanding. "Actually, Mrs. Johnson, it is." She opened her briefcase and withdrew a sealed envelope. "Mr. Ethan Johnson, this is an official copy of your father's revised last will and testament." The words landed like thunder in the quiet terminal. A few people turned to look. Ethan blinked. What Marcus's voice was calm but precise. "You'll want to read that carefully. It explains everything." Ethan tore the envelope open with shaking hands. The legal documents unfolded like a verdict. As his eyes darted across the pages, his jaw clenched tighter. This says I've been disinherited." "That's correct," Angela said. "Your father has made alternate arrangements for his estate." Claire stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Marcus, you can't be serious. Think of the children I am." Marcus interrupted gently. "That's why their father needed to learn the cost of deceit before it becomes their inheritance." Ethan's voice rose, drawing the attention of nearby travelers. "You can't do this to us." "I already did," Marcus said. Ethan's hands trembled as he pointed at the papers. "You've lost your mind. You're punishing us for one mistake." Marcus's eyes met his son's, not with anger, but with an unflinching steadiness that came from decades of endurance. "One mistake," he repeated. "You left me standing in an airport like I was baggage. You took my money, erased me from your life, and called it an oversight. You've spent years acting like my skin was an inconvenience you could manage. This isn't punishment, Ethan. It's truth catching up." The words hung in the air heavy and unbreakable. Claire tried to step in again, but Angela raised a hand. "Mr. Johnson," she said, addressing Ethan with professional calm, "your father's decision is legally binding. You can challenge it if you wish, but I assure you, you will lose." Ethan's mouth opened, then closed again. Around them the hum of the terminal returned, luggage rolling, announcements blaring. People hurried past, pretending not to stare. Marcus crouched to look at Sophie and Liam. Their wide, confused eyes mirrored a question he couldn't answer yet. "Your grandpa loves you," he said softly. "Always remember that." Sophie hugged him again, sensing something final in his voice. Ethan stood motionless, the papers trembling in his hands. Marcus turned to him once more. "You thought you were protecting your family from embarrassment," he said quietly. "What you really did was teach them how easy it is to betray someone who trusts you." Then he looked at Angela. "We're done here." She nodded. As they walked toward the exit, Marcus didn't look back. The automatic doors slid open, the bright afternoon sun spilling over them. Behind him, Ethan's voice called out something between anger and pleading, but Marcus kept walking. Outside, the breeze from the bay carried the faint scent of jet fuel and salt. Angela exhaled beside him. That, she said, was the cleanest ending I've ever witnessed. Marcus smiled faintly. "It's not an ending," he said. "It's a handover, from silence to consequence." They reached the parking garage, the sound of rolling suitcases fading behind them. Angela unlocked her car and turned to him. "You okay?" Marcus looked out at the skyline beyond the airport, the bridges, the cranes, the faint silhouette of the city he'd spent a lifetime helping to build. "I'm finally okay," he said. "For the first time in 68 years. He shook Angela's hand firmly. "Thank you for giving me my dignity back." Angela smiled. "You always had it, Mr. Johnson. You just stopped hiding it," Marcus chuckled. "Then maybe it's time I start showing it again." He walked to his own car keys in hand, his reflection shining faintly in the polished metal, a man who had faced his past and come out standing. As he drove away, the radio came on by chance, playing Sam Cooke's voice like a benediction. "It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come." Marcus tapped the steering wheel to the rhythm, smiling to himself. The change had already come. By the time Marcus reached the terminal exit, the air outside had shifted cooler, sharper, carrying the weight of something that refused to be left behind. He could hear his name echoing faintly behind him, Ethan's voice brittle and desperate, pushing through the noise of rolling suitcases and murmured conversations. "Dad, don't you walk away from me?" Marcus stopped. He didn't turn right away. He stood still, the sunlight glinting off the glass walls, the hum of arriving passengers filling the silence between them. Angela, a few paces ahead, glanced back and nodded once. "It's your call." Marcus turned slowly. Ethan was weaving through the crowd, the legal documents still clutched in his hand, pages creased from anger. Claire followed close behind, dragging the suitcases with one hand and holding Sophie's wrist with the other. The little girl looked scared. Liam trailed behind, silent. When they reached him, Ethan's voice cracked open with fury. "You humiliated us in front of everyone." Marcus met his gaze, unflinching. "No, son. I just gave the truth a place to stand." People were beginning to slow down around them, the unspoken gravity of conflict pulling their attention. Phones lifted discreetly. A few whispered to one another. The story that began in betrayal was now unfolding in public view. "You don't understand what you've done," Ethan said, lowering his voice, but not his rage. "Do you think this makes you look noble? Everyone's going to think you're bitter, another angry old man who couldn't let go." Marcus took a step closer, his voice calm but deliberate. "They can think what they want. What matters is that I stopped letting people rewrite my story while I was still alive." Claire tried to interject, her tone shaky. "Marcus, please. The kids are watching." "They should—" Marcus interrupted gently. "They should see what truth looks like when it stops apologizing." Sophie clung to her mother's leg, whispering, "Why is Grandpa mad?" Marcus knelt so he was eye level with her. "I'm not mad, sweetheart. I'm just not pretending anymore." The crowd had fully gathered now, travelers pretending to scroll their phones, security officers watching from a distance, but not intervening. Angela stood quietly to the side, her expression unreadable, her presence like an anchor, holding the moment steady. Ethan waved the will in his hand. "You think these papers change who I am to you? I'm still your son." Marcus nodded slowly. "By blood, yes. But being a son isn't just DNA, Ethan. It's character. It's respect. It's not abandoning your father at an airport and calling it an oversight." "That's not what happened," Ethan shot back. "You're twisting everything." Marcus's voice cut through him like quiet thunder. "No, I'm remembering everything. For once, I'm not letting you or anyone else decide which parts of me are worth keeping." The words hung there heavy and final. A few people nearby murmured approval. A man in a flight jacket muttered under his breath, "Damn right." Ethan's face flushed. "You're turning this into some race thing again, aren't you? You always do. You think the world's still against you, but you don't see that it's your attitude that ruins everything." Marcus's expression didn't change. "You think I made the world what it is? You think my attitude stopped that woman from clutching her purse tighter every time I passed her? Or the banks from asking for extra verification because of my skin? I didn't invent the world that made you ashamed of where you came from, Ethan. I just stopped forgiving it." For a moment, even Ethan seemed to falter. His anger deflated into something smaller, rawer shame trying to disguise itself as pride. Claire whispered something, a plea, a distraction, but he wasn't listening. He dropped his gaze to the documents in his hand, the black ink that spelled out the truth he couldn't undo. "You really did it," he said quietly. "You cut me out." Marcus nodded. "No, son. You did that the moment you decided I was expendable." Angela stepped forward, then her tone professional but firm. "Mr. Johnson, I think it's time we go." But Marcus wasn't finished. He looked at Sophie and Liam one last time. "You two remember something," he said softly. "Kindness isn't weakness. And love doesn't mean letting people use you. The world's going to try to tell you both that your worth depends on who approves of you. Don't ever believe that." Sophie's lip trembled. "Grandpa, will we still see you?" Marcus forced a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Someday, sweetheart. When you're old enough to understand." He turned to Ethan, who stood frozen silent, his knuckles white around the crumpled papers. "You wanted control," Marcus said. Now you've got it of everything except me." And with that, he turned and walked toward the doors. The automatic glass parted smoothly, the sunlight spilling across his path like a benediction. Angela followed her heels, clicking softly against the floor. Behind them, the murmurs of the terminal rose and fell like the tide. Outside, the air was bright, cool, alive. Marcus inhaled deeply, his chest rising with something that felt dangerously close to peace. Angela joined him at the curb, her briefcase clasped tightly in one hand. "That was powerful," she said quietly. "I've seen clients fight for justice, but rarely so publicly." Marcus gave a tired smile. "Public is the only language some people understand." Angela nodded. "You know the way you spoke, that's something the world needs to hear." He glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "Tell your story," she said. "Not for revenge, but for truth. You could reach people who've been silenced the same way you were." Marcus looked out toward the city skyline glinting faintly in the distance. "Maybe," he said. "But not today." Angela smiled. "Whenever you're ready." As they walked to the parking garage, Marcus thought of Evelyn again, her voice, her courage, the way she used to whisper, "Dignity isn't given, Marcus. It's remembered." He smiled faintly. "I remember now." The breeze carried the scent of jet fuel and ocean salt, and for the first time since the betrayal began, Marcus felt lighter than air. By the next morning, the airport confrontation had spread like wildfire. Someone had filmed it, of course they had, and by dawn the clip was everywhere. The caption read, "Elderly black father confronts son at SFO, you cut me out when you forgot who I was." It had 500,000 views by noon. The comments section was a battlefield part, empathy part, outrage part, denial. This broke my heart. He raised a man who forgot what it means to be a son. Typical turning family drama into a race issue. That man's dignity is unshakable. Marcus sat at his kitchen table, phone face down, coffee, cooling untouched. He hadn't planned on becoming a public story, but maybe that was the point. For once his version of the truth was the one the world heard first. The doorbell rang just after noon. When he opened it, Angela stood there holding a newspaper. "You've gone viral," she said, half amused, half sympathetic. "Front page of the Oakland Tribune. They're calling you the father who walked away." Marcus chuckled dryly. "Took me 68 years to walk away, right?" Angela handed him the paper. The photo captured him mid-step, sunlight on his face, shoulders straight, eyes forward, while Ethan stood behind him, mouth open in disbelief. The headline read, "One man's silence when family, race, and dignity collide." He read the article silently. It was surprisingly fair. It didn't sensationalize. It told the story of a man who had funded his family's comfort only to be erased from it, a man whose silence had turned into strength. "They want to interview you," Angela said. "Bay Area." Now reached out. So did NPR. Marcus shook his head. "I'm not a soundbite. I'm a man who got tired of being quiet." Angela smiled. "That's exactly why they want you." He hesitated. "If I say yes, it can't just be about my son. It has to be bigger. The system that made him believe my worth was negotiable, that's the real story." "Then tell it," Angela said simply. 2 days later, Marcus sat under the warm studio lights of a local news station. The interviewer, a poised woman in her 40s, introduced him as the man whose stand for dignity has sparked a national conversation. Her first question was gentle, "Mr. Johnson, what made you cancel that vacation?" Marcus leaned forward, hands clasped. "Because it wasn't a vacation if it required me to disappear first." She blinked, surprised. He continued. "For years, people like me, black fathers, grandfathers, we've been told to endure, to forgive quietly, to shrink ourselves so everyone else can stay comfortable. But when my own son told me to go home after taking my money, I realized I'd raised him in that same lie, that peace matters more than self-respect." The interviewer nodded slowly. "And you believe race played a role?" Marcus gave a small, sad smile. "Race always plays a role. It's just polite folks who pretend it doesn't. My son learned early that his light skin opened doors I could never walk through. Over time, he stopped holding them open for me. That's not personal hatred, that's conditioning. America doesn't have to say, "You don't belong" out loud anymore. It just teaches your children to forget you. There was a silence in the studio. The interviewer's throat bobbed before she asked, "What do you hope comes from this?" Marcus took a long breath. That people stop confusing silence with peace. That men like me stop mistaking endurance for love. And that my grandchildren grow up in a world where they don't have to erase half of who they are just to fit in. When the interview aired that evening, it struck a nerve. The video spread across social media classrooms and community groups. Black fathers shared it with their sons. White allies shared it with their friends. The hashtags #remember, Marcus and #dignity. Is not revenge trended for 2 straight days. Emails poured into Angela's office, letters of gratitude, requests for speaking engagements, donations to the scholarship fund that hadn't even launched yet. One message from a high school teacher in Georgia read, "Your client made my students cry today. We're reading his interview in class. Thank you for helping him tell the story so many of our fathers never got to tell." Angela forwarded it to Marcus with a note. "You started something whether you meant to or not." He replied, "Then maybe that's what Evelyn wanted me to do." That Sunday, Marcus attended church for the first time in years. When he walked in, heads turned not out of judgment this time, but respect. After the service, the pastor approached him with a firm handshake. "Brother Johnson," he said warmly, "you gave a lot of us a voice this week." Marcus smiled, humbled but uneasy. "I didn't mean to." "That's what makes it real," the pastor replied. "You didn't chase power, you reclaimed it." As the choir began a soft hymn, Marcus sat quietly in the pew, letting the words wash over him. "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me." For years he'd sung those words thinking grace meant forgiveness. Now he realized it also meant truth. Grace was the courage to stop lying to yourself for the sake of others. After the service, a young man approached him, early 20s, dressed in a wrinkled hoodie. "Sir," he said shyly, "I saw your video." "My dad, he left when I was little. I used to think he didn't care, but now I wonder if he just couldn't take how folks treated him. You made me want to reach out to him." Marcus smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then reach. Sometimes the bridge doesn't need fixing, it just needs someone brave enough to cross it." The young man nodded, eyes glistening. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson." Marcus watched him leave, feeling something settle inside him. Not pride, not triumph, but purpose. The kind of peace Evelyn would have called holy. As he walked out of the church into the golden afternoon light, Marcus whispered, "We're breaking it, Evie. The cycle ends here." And this time, he believed it. The first sign of backlash came quietly, a comment here, a message there. But by the end of the week, it was a storm. Marcus had expected resistance. Truth always stirred the hornet's nest. Still, the intensity surprised him. His inbox overflowed with messages from strangers who had decided that his story was theirs to dissect. "You ruined your son's life over a vacation. Stop using race as an excuse for bad parenting. Typical, always playing the victim." And beneath those, another kind of message, quieter, more dangerous. "You should have stayed silent, old man." He scrolled through them at his desk, unbothered but aware. The internet was the same beast that had once ignored men like him, only now it stared too hard. He closed the laptop, inhaled deeply, and turned to the sound of rain outside. The world had found its new controversy, and Marcus Johnson had become its unwilling symbol. Angela called that afternoon. "You holding up?" He chuckled. "If I survived segregation layoffs and being the only black man in every boardroom for 40 years, I think I can handle a few tweets." Angela laughed softly. "Fair point, but still be careful. You've stirred something deep. People project their own guilt onto whoever's brave enough to tell the truth." Marcus looked out the window where raindrops streaked down the glass like tears. "I didn't mean to stir anything. I just told the truth." And that, Angela said, is exactly what scares them. By evening, a news panel on national television had picked up the story. 4 commentators debated Marcus's choices like he was a case study. He weaponized his fatherhood. No, he exposed generational gaslighting. This is about race and class colliding in one household. Or it's just a bitter man punishing his son. Marcus watched for a minute, then turned the TV off. He didn't need translation. He'd lived that conversation his entire life, people talking about him around him, but never to him. That night he wrote in his journal for the first time in months, "They see defiance where I feel peace." They call it bitterness because they've never tasted truth that wasn't sweet. Evelyn, you'd tell me not to care. But I think you'd also tell me this when you speak. After a lifetime of silence, the world confuses the sound for thunder. He smiled, set the pen down, and listened to the rain tapping against the window. It didn't sound like thunder. It sounded like cleansing. 2 days later, Angela forwarded him an email. Subject: Public Response Request. Mr. Johnson, we'd like to invite you to appear on Morning Perspective. The host wants to discuss the racial dimensions of your story. You'd have the opportunity to share your side unfiltered. Marcus hesitated. Morning talk shows don't do unfiltered, he told Angela. I know, she said. But sometimes you've got to step into their space to make them see yours. He thought of it that night, the balance between dignity and noise, between silence and the responsibility that came with being heard. By morning, he had made up his mind. Book it, he told her. The studio was bright, sterile, and cold. Marcus sat across from the host, a man half his age with an immaculate smile and a rehearsed look of empathy. Cameras glided like watchful eyes around them. Mr. Johnson, the host began, millions of people have seen your story. Some call you a hero, others say you went too far. How do you respond to those who think you overreacted? Marcus leaned forward, his voice calm. When a man stands up after being told to sit down his entire life, it looks like rebellion to those who've never had to bow. The host blinked, caught off guard. But do you think involving race makes the situation more divisive? Marcus smiled faintly. Race isn't something you involve. It's something that's already there whether you name it or not. My son's erasure of me wasn't just personal. It was learned. He learned from a world that says black fathers are optional, that we're either absent or disposable. I refuse to prove them right. The host paused, searching for a response. Some would argue forgiveness isn't the same as permission, Marcus interrupted. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It means you stop letting it define you. And I forgave my son the moment I stopped letting his shame control my worth. Silence followed. Even the camera crew seemed to still. When the segment aired, it broke through the noise. Viewers described Marcus's words as surgical healing, unapologetic. The backlash didn't vanish, but it began to bend. People started listening instead of shouting. That weekend, Marcus took a walk through Lake Merritt. The air smelled of damp soil and jasmine. Joggers passed by, ducks drifted on the water, and in the distance kids played basketball on a cracked court. He stopped for a while, watching them laugh and shove and run, all joy, no caution. One of them noticed him and waved. "Hey, you, that man from TV." Marcus laughed. "Depends what you saw." The one who told his son off, the boy grinned. "My dad said you're a legend." Marcus smiled, warmth rising in his chest. "Tell your dad I said thanks. And listen to him when he tells you about respect. It'll save you a lifetime." The boy nodded solemnly, like it was gospel, before running back to the game. Marcus sat on a nearby bench, letting the sound of sneakers and laughter fill the air. He thought about the generations before him, men who had swallowed their pride for survival, men who never got to finish their sentences. He whispered to the lake, "We're finishing them now." As the sun set behind the skyline, the reflection on the water shimmered gold, fractured, beautiful whole. Marcus closed his eyes and breathed. The world could debate him all it wanted. The truth didn't need defending anymore. He had spoken, and the echo was still moving. A month later, Marcus stood behind a mahogany podium at the University of California, Berkeley. The banner above him read, "The Marcus Johnson Scholarship for Equity in Engineering." Launch ceremony. Rows of students filled the small auditorium. Some young and wide-eyed others, older, weary, but hopeful. Faculty members lined the walls, and at the center of the front row sat Angela Brooks, smiling with quiet pride. Marcus adjusted the microphone. His hands were steady. He had spent his whole life giving presentations to engineers and executives, men who judged him by his diction and his patience. This time, there were no boardrooms to impress, just hearts to reach. He looked up, scanning the crowd. I never thought my name would be on a scholarship." He began, voice rich and steady. "Not because I didn't believe in my work, but because for most of my life, I was too busy proving I deserved a seat in rooms that were never built for me." Soft murmurs rippled through the audience. "I spent 43 years as an engineer," he continued, "but the hardest thing I ever built wasn't a bridge or a system. It was self-respect, one brick at a time, while the world tried to take it apart." He paused, letting the words breathe. "The scholarship you see today, this isn't charity. It's a promise to every Black student, every child who's been told they're not the right fit, that your brilliance doesn't need permission to exist." The audience leaned forward. Some were recording, others simply listening. Angela's pen tapped softly against her notebook, her quiet way of cheering him on. Marcus continued, his voice warming. "When I was your age, my professors told me I was smart for someone from my background. At work, they said I spoke well. And in my own home, I once heard that my presence didn't match the image my son wanted to project." He let the silence stretch. The weight of it landed like truth in every corner of the room. "I used to forgive those words because I wanted peace. I thought forgiveness meant silence, but forgiveness without honesty is just fear wearing Sunday clothes." A few students nodded. One young woman wiped her eyes. Marcus smiled gently. "When my son left me at an airport, it wasn't just a family betrayal, it was history repeating itself. It was the echo of every door that's ever closed on people like me disguised as forgetfulness. That day I realized something: peace doesn't come from pretending things are fine. It comes from deciding you'll never shrink again." Applause began softly, then grew louder. Marcus raised a hand for quiet. "Don't get me wrong, this story isn't about bitterness. It's about clarity. You can forgive someone and still hold them accountable. You can love them and still say you won't use me again." He smiled faintly. "That's not anger. That's evolution." The students laughed lightly, not at humor, but at recognition. "People ask me how it feels to lose my family," Marcus said, his tone softening. "But the truth is, I didn't lose them. I found myself. And when you find yourself, your full, unedited self, you realize that love built on conditions was never love at all." He leaned closer to the microphone. "I stand here today not as a victim, but as a blueprint, because the world will try to take pieces of you, your voice, your pride, your color, and make you believe you're too much of one thing or not enough of another. But the moment you stop asking to be smaller, you become unstoppable." A long silence followed, broken only by the sound of a few people snapping their fingers, the rhythm of spoken truth. Marcus smiled, taking a sip of water before closing. "This scholarship isn't just money, it's a message. When you walk into a room that wasn't made for you, walk in anyway. Take up space. Be loud. Be kind. Be excellent. And if anyone tries to make you feel like you don't belong, tell them, 'My name's already on the door, you just haven't seen it yet.'" The room erupted in applause. Angela was the first to stand, followed by the dean, then the students. Within seconds, everyone was on their feet. The sound filled the auditorium, not polite clapping, but something fuller, more emotional. Marcus stepped back from the podium, overwhelmed but grounded. He didn't cry. He didn't have to. The applause wasn't for pity, it was for survival. When the ceremony ended, students gathered around him. Some asked for photos, others for hugs. A young Black student with braids said, "Mr. Johnson, I'm studying civil engineering because of you. My dad showed me your video the day he decided to go back to school." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "Then I guess both of us built something worth keeping," he said softly. As the crowd thinned, Angela approached. "You handled that perfectly," she said. "Evelyn would have been proud." Marcus looked out at the emptying auditorium where sunlight streamed through high windows, illuminating the stage. "She already is," he said. Angela smiled. "How do you feel?" "Like I just handed my pain a new job title," Marcus said. "It's called hope." They laughed quietly together, the kind of laugh that felt like release. When everyone was gone, Marcus stood alone for a moment, looking at the banner one last time. The scholarship bore his name now, not as a reminder of loss, but as a record of transformation. He whispered, "You see, Evie? They finally heard us. Outside, the sky was vast and blue, the air warm with spring's arrival. Students streamed across the courtyard, their laughter echoing through the campus. Marcus walked among them, shoulders back, eyes lifted. He had become the man he wished his son would one day understand, not out of anger, but out of love that had finally learned to protect itself. And as he left the campus grounds, a single phrase repeated softly in his mind. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of self. It happened one evening just before sunset. Marcus was in his study sipping tea and reading a letter from a scholarship recipient, a young woman who'd written, "Your story gave me courage to apply for engineering, even when my advisor said I should aim lower." The letter made him smile. It reminded him that pain, when handled right, could plant seeds instead of scars. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps on the front door. Marcus frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone Angela had called earlier, and no one else ever visited without warning. He stood, adjusted his cardigan, and walked to the door. When he opened it, Ethan stood there. The son he hadn't seen in 2 months looked smaller somehow. His tan had faded, his eyes ringed with exhaustion. He held no suitcases, no gifts, just his hands stuffed into his jacket pockets like a boy who'd lost his words. "Dad," he said quietly. Marcus's pulse quickened, but his expression stayed calm. "Ethan." For a long moment, neither moved. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator and the cicadas outside. Ethan cleared his throat. "Can I come in?" Marcus hesitated, then nodded. For a conversation, not a confrontation. Ethan nodded once and stepped inside. The smell of home oak polish, old books, and Evelyn's faint perfume filled the silence between them. Marcus gestured toward the living room. Ethan sat on the edge of the couch like a man who didn't trust the furniture. "This place looks the same," he said, glancing around. "It's supposed to," Marcus replied. "Some things don't need to change to stay strong." Ethan looked down at his hands. "I saw your speech, the scholarship thing." Marcus waited. "You were good," Ethan said, voice tight. "People loved it. You've become this symbol." He almost spat the word. The strong black father who finally stood up. The man who broke the cycle. Marcus studied him. "That bother you?" Ethan's jaw flexed. "It bothers me that you told the whole world about our private life." Marcus's tone was even. "Our life stopped being private when you left me at an airport." Ethan flinched. "I told you that was a mistake." "You told me it was logistics," Marcus said. "Big difference." Silence stretched. The clock ticked loudly in the corner. Finally, Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You want the truth," he said quietly. Claire thought. She thought it'd be awkward having you there. She said people might stare, that it'd draw attention. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. "Because I'm black." Ethan didn't answer. His silence said enough. Marcus leaned back slowly, letting the weight of the words settle. "After all these years, I'm still the one who doesn't fit the picture." "Not even in my own family album." Ethan looked up sharply. "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that," Marcus interrupted, calm but firm. "You built a life that needed me invisible. You wanted my money, my legacy, my presence in your bank account, but not my face in your photos." Ethan's voice cracked. "That's not fair." Marcus's tone didn't waver. "Fairness ended the moment you made me invisible to your children. You call that a mistake. I call it inheritance, the kind you didn't want, but couldn't help passing down." Ethan slumped back, covering his face with his hands. "Claire's gone," he said finally. "She left a week after we got back. Said she couldn't handle the attention, the comments, the stares. Said I embarrassed her." Marcus exhaled slowly. "Consequences, son. They come for all of us." "I'm not here for pity," Ethan said, voice low. I came because I don't know how to fix this." Marcus looked at him for a long time, his heart tight, but not hardened. "You start by admitting you broke it. Then you teach your kids better." Ethan looked up, his eyes rimmed red. "Sophie asks about you every night. She still draws you in her pictures. Liam, too. I think they miss you." Marcus's voice softened. "I miss them, too. They didn't do anything wrong." "Then talk to them," Ethan pleaded. "Please, don't punish them for what I did." Marcus shook his head gently. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting peace, something I didn't have for too long. Ethan leaned back, staring at the ceiling. You think peace means being alone? No, Marcus said. It means not being surrounded by people who confuse love with ownership. For a while, neither spoke. The house creaked softly as the evening wind slipped through the open window. Somewhere outside, a dog barked once and fell silent again. Finally, Marcus stood. It's getting late. Ethan rose too, his movements slow. Dad, I know sorry doesn't fix it, but I am sorry. Marcus studied his face, the boy he had raised buried somewhere inside the man he no longer recognized. I believe you, he said quietly, but believing isn't the same as forgetting. Ethan's shoulders sagged. So that's it. I lose you forever. Marcus's expression softened. You never lost me, Ethan. You just stopped looking in the right direction. Ethan swallowed hard, nodding. Maybe someday. Maybe, Marcus said. But not today. Ethan hesitated, then stepped forward not to hug, but to shake his father's hand. Marcus took it. The gesture was brief, heavy, with what neither could say. When the door closed behind him, Marcus stood for a long time in the quiet house. The air still carried the echo of Ethan's voice, the ache of things unfinished. But it also carried something else, closure. He walked to Evelyn's photo on the mantel and touched the edge of the frame. He's not there yet, he whispered. But at least he knocked. Outside, the sky blazed with the last orange light of day. Marcus stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the world soften into dusk. He didn't feel triumphant or broken, just steady. The next chapter of his life had already begun, and this time he wasn't walking alone. He had a purpose now, a generation to guide, and a legacy that no apology could undo. And somewhere deep inside, beyond the hurt and the history, he found something unexpected. Forgiveness not as surrender, but as freedom. The morning was calm, the kind of quiet that feels earned. Sunlight filtered gently through the lace curtains, casting soft golden patterns on the living room walls. Marcus sat in his favorite chair, Evelyn's old seat by the window, watching the world outside wake up. A delivery truck rumbled down the street, a dog barked somewhere in the distance, and the faint smell of magnolia drifted in from the garden. The newspaper on his lap was folded neatly to a feature article titled, From Betrayal to Breakthrough, How Marcus Johnson's Story Redefined Family and Forgiveness. The subheading read, One man's courage to confront injustice has turned into a movement for generational healing. He read the opening lines, slowly smiling at the irony. For years he had designed bridges, literal ones made of steel and precision. Now at the end of his life, he'd built a different kind of bridge, one made of truth spanning the gap between silence and dignity. His phone buzzed softly beside him. A video call notification from Angela. "Morning, Mr. Johnson," she said as her face appeared on the screen. "You made the New York Times. They're calling you the architect of moral justice." Marcus chuckled. "I'll take that over, angry old man." Angela smiled. "How are you feeling today?" He took a long breath, gazing at the sunlight on the floor. Peaceful. Tired, but peaceful. "I think Evelyn would say I finally made my own weather." Angela's eyes softened. "You did more than that. You changed the air for everyone who comes after you." They spoke briefly about the scholarship fund applications pouring in donations, tripling after his last speech. The mentorship center renovation had begun, and local volunteers were already helping. The movement had grown far beyond what either of them imagined. When the call ended, Marcus sat quietly listening to the house breathe. Each creak, each whisper of the wind through the window felt like Evelyn's voice humming somewhere nearby. He reached for his journal, flipping to the last empty page. His handwriting, once sharp, had softened with age. He wrote slowly, deliberately, "Legacy isn't what they remember when you're gone. It's what they carry when they stand up for themselves. It's the sound of a door no one can close again." He set down the pen and looked around the room. The photographs on the mantel formed a mosaic of his life. Evelyn smiling at their wedding, Ethan as a boy in his Little League uniform, the grandkids in their Halloween costumes. A full, complicated life. There was a soft knock at the door. Marcus turned his head and smiled faintly when he saw who it was. The mail carrier, an older black woman named Marlene, who always called him Mr. J. "Got something special for you," she said cheerfully, handing over a thick envelope. "Looks official." Marcus thanked her, opened the envelope carefully, and unfolded the contents. It was a letter from UC Berkeley's engineering department, printed on embossed stationery. "Dear Mr. Johnson, we are honored to inform you that the first 3 recipients of the Marcus Johnson Scholarship have been selected. Each student wrote essays about how your story inspired them to pursue education despite personal hardship. We invite you to a private dinner to meet them next month. Your courage has already changed lives." He read it twice, his eyes glistening. Evelyn's photo seemed to glow in the soft light beside him. "They're doing it, Evie," he whispered. "They're building it right." The house was quiet again, save for the slow ticking of the wall clock. He leaned back in the chair, eyes half closed, letting the warmth of the sunlight wrap around him like a blanket. Later that evening, Angela stopped by after work with dinner homemade gumbo still steaming in the pot. "You better not tell me you've been skipping meals again," she said teasingly. Marcus laughed weakly. "I wouldn't dare. You lawyers are scarier than doctors." They ate together in comfortable silence for a while. Angela told him about a new case involving a retired teacher denied her pension because of racial discrimination. "You've inspired her to fight back," she said. "She quoted you, peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of self." Marcus smiled softly. Then maybe the lesson stuck. When Angela stood to leave, he walked her to the door. "Thank you," he said, "for giving my story structure and my pain purpose." "You gave it power," she replied. "I just put it on paper." After she left, Marcus lingered by the open doorway, breathing in the cool night air. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed slow, haunting, familiar. He closed his eyes, letting the sound roll through him. That night, Marcus wrote one last letter, not to Ethan, not to the media, but to his grandchildren. He addressed it simply, "To Sophie and Liam, when you're old enough to understand. My dear ones, you'll hear many stories about me. Some will call me proud, others bitter. Believe what you will, but know this love without respect isn't love. I hope you live in a world that doesn't ask you to choose between the two. Never let anyone make you small to fit their comfort. Speak truth even when it shakes the room. And when you walk across a bridge someone else built, remember to say their name out loud. All my love. Grandpa Marcus." He sealed the envelope and placed it in the desk drawer beside his journal. Then he turned off the lamp and sat back one last time in the glow of the moonlight. For the first time in years, there was no noise in his mind, no guilt, no anger, no ache, just quiet certainty that everything had found its place. Outside, the wind stirred the magnolia branches and the clock ticked softly toward midnight. When morning came, the sunlight streamed through the same window, warm, golden, eternal. The newspaper lay untouched on the table, the cup of tea beside it still half full. Marcus Johnson sat peacefully in his chair, eyes closed, a faint smile on his face. The letter on his desk would be found later that day. The scholarship fund would continue to grow. And at the mentorship center that now bore his name, a quote would be engraved in brass above the entrance. "Forgiveness is not silence. It's choosing not to let pain define who you are." Marcus Johnson. People would stop and read it, feeling something stir not sorrow, but strength, because the man who had once been left behind had taught the world something immortal, that dignity once claimed never dies.